John F. Kennedy High School in Maryland. I know that you are super nervous about the AP exam this year. It's totally fine. We got under control. You've done so much hard work. So we are just going to come back around one more time and just iron out all the pieces to make sure that you're good to go for presentation on that AP exam coming up very soon. So we're taking a look here at the concept application FRQ and the institutions. Pause that video. Go grab the PDF copy of the question. Pen, pencil, something to drink, a snack, so that we can practice and write and good to go. This will take about 15 minutes. We are going to get started. So we're jumping right in with both feet on what does the actual prompt itself look like. So go ahead and pause here and read that prompt. I might actually even take an attempt at writing it. Last time we talked about where points are and how to attempt it. This will be a great time for you to make sure that you've done everything correctly. So by pausing that video and attempting to write it, everything else that you do after this point is going to make more sense. So pause it. Let's get into it. All right, you're back. I'm going to take a look at this and see where am I going to find those points on the page. I know this first one I'm looking for a model of voting behavior, so I'm going to scour the stimulus looking for information about voters. What are voters doing? What does it look like? I'm going to have to think about that voting behavior model, but I'm looking for any evidence of voters in action. Right? You see it up here talking about recall ballots and things on the ballot. So that's a place we're going to come back to later. Then we're going to take a look at any place where the media is involved. Here we're looking at late night television programming. We're looking at the story being told. All of those things are places for us as holes into the questions that are there in task B. And then finally, we're looking at your electoral process. So again, coming back around to looking for evidence of elections, and it's right where before we were looking at voters. So we might be doing some double dipping here on some of the content.
Let me show you how we do stuff around it. Actually, my department uses Monday.com, so I'm good. Work management tool.
Just make sure that I'm on the right page. So this is a lot of information, so I'm going to go really quickly. That linkage institutions are there to connect voters to their policy-making institutions, right? So policy-making institutions, Congress, president, courts, bureaucracy, and then everything at the state level, right? We have to convey our interest. We can do that in a lot of different ways. We can do that through a participatory democratic model. We can do that through pluralism. We can do that through elitism, right? But linkage institutions are ways of us speaking with one voice or fewer voices to tell our elected officials what we want. So interest groups, big thing there, are they care about policy outputs. And they are going to support that by collecting and distributing resources, messaging to members, and going ahead and influencing policymakers through lobbying, iron triangles, so on and so forth. Parties, their effort is all about winning elections. And we are seeing that parties are changing their role due to the rise of candidate-centered campaigns. Hopefully you had a long time to talk about this with your instructor about what that change or transition looks like over time. But we can still see parties kind of simmering in the background. They're going to be doing this through endorsements. They're going to be using their distributed and non-hierarchical network to help support campaigns all around the country and at different levels by messaging, mobilizing party members, and collecting resources and distributing those resources. The media is going to be a way for elected officials to message to the public and the public to message to elected officials. The media is kind of the people in between who are helping that. But because they're in between and they're making decisions about what they're going to report on and how, whether it's investigative reporting, election coverage, commentary, daily news, it's going to affect our opinions about things. And one of the biggest things that we talk about in this course is through horse race journalism, and that's not really focusing on what a politician wants to be when they get in office, but who's ahead in the race, right? Keeping it like it's kind of like some kind of sporting event. And then finally, elections. Elections are the linkage institution that is going to have the most kind of push control by the state level. I tell my students to think about it like the states have the most control over this because of Article 1, Section 4, and a couple other parts of the Constitution. So we look to the states to make decisions about who can be a voter, what it takes to register, what qualifications are, how they're going to conduct elections, if they're going to conduct them at all, especially during primaries, what our campaign finance laws are, if they're going to allow for more participatory measures like ballot initiatives, referendums, and recalls, and then administration. You know, making decisions about where polling stations are, voter ID laws, whether or not there's absentee and early voting. All of those things are going to have an impact on the messaging that's there. A lot of times that messaging isn't explicit, right? But there is a message nonetheless. You also need to think about voting models. Rational choice, retrospective, prospective, straight ticket. Rational choice, are you making a decision that's based on what's in your best interest, what you perceive? Retrospective, thinking backwards, what did this person do before that's going to help me decide whether or not they merit being reelected? Prospective would be, what will they do in the future? What are they promising in the future? Look for their platform to make that decision of whether or not they are going to hold what you have in the palm of their hand. And then finally, straight ticket voting model. That's the idea of voters just voting all Republican or all Democrat because they are members of the party in the electorate.
Shoelace Learning is a game-based learning platform that delivers reading comprehension content through video games kids love to play in the classroom.
So going back to that prompt, I see a couple of those connections, right? The model here, we're thinking about, oh, okay, so if we're thinking about what had happened in the past with Ray Davis, right? That's what's bringing it to the recall election. So we've already got a little bit of a link there, right? The media's role, we see announcing on popular television, very important connection there to the B point, and then our C point, that process, we see some back in there too. So this is something that I provide my students that's helpful. I teach freshmen, and sometimes they are nervous that they're not going to do all of the thinking moves that they need to in order to earn that point. My suggestion would be take a screenshot of this. These are sentence starters, and they're there to help you feel more confident as you're practicing. I know we use them in my classroom. Obviously, you can't use them on the AP exam, but there's just ways to make sure that you're using signal phrases that are telling yourself and the reader that you're attempting very particular types of thinking moves in your writing. So we get to that A point. Describe the model of voting behavior that best reflects the voter's choice to recall the governor in the scenario. And the student response here says, in the scenario, voters use retrospective voting to recall Governor Davis. By focusing on his past failure in budgeting and energy crisis, Republicans were able to garner support and recall Davis based on his record as an elected official, thus using the retrospective voting model. What I really like about this is that the student is repeating the prompt, right? And then they're identifying which model it is. That is not enough on its own to earn that point. You've got to pull information down from the stimulus, our proper noun information that is going to show particularly where you see retrospective in the stimulus. And it is just as easy as saying budgeting shortfall and energy crisis, right? That's his behaviors as governor leading to him being recalled. That's evaluating what he did in the past. And that is a perfect description. Our B point, we're looking for, in the context of the scenario, explain how the media's role as a linkage institution might have affected the voting behavior described in Part A. student response here says, as a Lincoln institution, the media drew attention to Davis's failings by giving the energy crisis widespread coverage in the news. The media kept the people of California informed of the goings-on of their state's government. Furthermore, Schwarzenegger's celebrity status drew national media attention, giving him a platform to influence voters and to spread his own narrative about his image as a self-made immigrant. By covering Davis's failings and giving already popular Schwarzenegger time to speak on a popular late-night television program, the media negatively influenced public opinion towards Davis, causing voters to be more likely to recall him. That's an excellent job, right? We have a very clear connection as to what their role is. They're drawing attention. They're educating the public, specifically here about Davis's failings, but also about what it is about Schwarzenegger that might make him a good candidate. I love that they've described in really lovely detail exactly where they see this idea of the media educating people, right? Going on television, spreading their narrative about a self-made immigrant, covering all of these issues, right? And the effect that it has at the end. I love it. They said by not only covering those failings, they are have a negative influence on Davis and are increasing the likelihood of a recall. I mean, that's excellent writing. Very clear that they're showing they understand what's happening in the scenario as it relates to course content. All right, so we get to that C point, and we're looking to explain how the electoral process for removing Governor Davis is different from the process of removing the sitting president of the United States. Wow, this is compare and contrast. So we're gonna have to talk about both how we remove Governor Davis according to the stimulus and knowledge that you have in the course about the impeachment process of removing a sitting president. So, the student says here, while California voters can vote to recall a sitting governor by initiating a petition, the average American citizen doesn't have as much influence in the removal of a sitting president. That's a great first sentence that's comparing, right? More for a sitting governor, less for a sitting president. Then they're going to describe it. On the federal level, articles of impeachment must be passed in the House, and the president must then be removed by a 2/3 vote in the Senate. While a petition from constituents may influence a congressperson to vote one way or the other, it doesn't have the power to initiate an impeachment in the same way that you can put a recall on the ballot in California. Furthermore, Americans cannot vote to impeach the president. Senators and representatives hold that responsibility. So there's a lot of specific detail here about that process that's showing the difference at the federal level versus the state level. Right? They're repeating the prompt, they're identifying the impact, they're using evidence from the scenario, and they're also pulling that into their knowledge in topic 1.6 about how we impeach the president. All of this together is a wonderful way of attempting to answer this question and show that you understand how we remove presidents from office and how that's different from the stimulus. So that's it.